What is up, Facebook fam? What is up, Periscope fam? This is episode 14 of Counterculture. I'm your host, Aaron Lujan. Today is July 30th, 2017, and I am broadcasting a little over 6,000 feet above sea level at the foot of Pikes Peak in Colorado, United States of America. And it feels good. It's Sunday, it's fun day. It's time to talk about an explosive news story that broke this week, and I see a lot of craziness in response. So I just wanted to not spend a whole lot of time, but perhaps provide a different perspective that you may not have taken into consideration amidst this story. The episode 14 is titled "Trump is Right. Mentally ill shouldn't serve in military." And the reason why I said mentally ill is because I refuse to use the word transgendered, not because of any dislike or hatred, but because it's not scientifically sound. And I'm going to get into that in a second. And I'm going to begin by saying that transgenderism is not an immutable characteristic that requires protection. It's costly and demoralizing to our military and society. So if you haven't been living underneath a van the last couple days, Donald Trump tweeted, and I'll read this to you right now: "After consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. Thank you." Coffee break, man. You guys can probably hear that sip. My bad. So what I would like to do is to begin by just explaining that I'm going to go over the reaction that we've been hearing from the media and from celebrities and from a lot of your friends on Facebook and Twitter. And then I'm going to talk about how transgenderism is not an immutable characteristic that requires protection, which is actually the reason why we're getting the reaction that we're getting, that I'm going to critique as misguided and incorrect, not because of my opinion, but because of fact and based in science. And then I'm going to explain why it's reasonable for the president to have made this decision, even though I'm not was never a supporter, but I support the president now. I wasn't a supporter during the election, so I just say that because I don't want to be labeled as a Trumpski. And I'm not on some bandwagon. I'm an independent thinker. I'm going to explain how transgenderism is costly and demoralizing, why the president made a fiscal decision that was wise, as well as a decision that was in the best interest of our military and our country, and explain why critics of Trump's decision are endangering the very people that they claim to help. And I'm going to continue that by explaining how the critics of Trump's decision are actually exploiting those people, the quote-unquote transgenders. And then I'm going to explain what the real agenda is, what's actually really going on, why we're getting this news story, why this is actually happening. And then I'd like to provide some solutions. So we just heard what the president said. The Washington Post and a lot of mainstream media have been saying things like, this is halting the advancement of rights for the LGBTQ. George, forgive me for not being able to pronounce my Japanese, George Takai, Star Trek dude, quote, "History shall record that you are not only the stupidest, most incompetent president ever, but also the cruelest and pettiest. #shame. Director Paul Feig, disgraceful. This is disgraceful. Anyone who wants to protect and serve this country should be supported." Deborah Messing said, "Making America discriminate again." Samantha Bee, if you guys watch her show Full Frontal, I like the name of her show. "After consultation with our staff, here is our current statement regarding at POTUS, transgender service tweets. FUCKU. Rob Reiner, the director, "Not allowing transgender people to serve in the military. Donald Trump again shows astounding ignorance and bigotry. Simply put, Donald Trump is a hateful human being." Jesse Tyler Ferguson said, "Sending a message that hate and discrimination should be tolerated if it saves us money, a shameful yet surprising new low. #equality for all." Demi Lovato, "I just want to tell the transgender community that I love you and you are supported no matter what. #protect trans troops." Joe Biden, Uncle Joe, God bless you, Joe. Every patriotic American who is qualified to serve in our military should be able to serve. Full stop. What does that mean? Full stop. Sounds like a science fiction movie. Michael Skolnick. This is bigotry. Plain and simple bigotry. He separated the words into 3 lines. So it added emphasis. Ellen DeGeneres. We should be grateful to the people who wish to serve, not turn our backs on them. Banning transgender people is hurtful, baseless, and wrong. Miley Cyrus. I was going to do her tongue, but that would look weird. I am heartbroken today. Please don't erase our progress. We've come so far. For our transgender friends who need someone to talk to, reach out to the Trans Lifeline, and then she leaves a bunch of support phone numbers and links. Actor Rob Reiner, he's a hateful human being. Billy Eichner. I hope deep down Trump voters realize the increasing amount of psychological and perhaps even physical damage they've done to fellow Americans. Lady Gaga. The message you have just, and this is my favorite one, by the way, because, it's Lady Gaga. The message you have just sent has endangered the lives of people all over the United States and overseas, bravely serving our nation. So that is the reaction from Hollywood, from the mainstream media, and probably from a lot of people that you're hearing from on Facebook. And so what I wanted to say is all of these comments are clearly based on a assumption or working under this notion that transgenderism is a immutable characteristic that requires protection similar to your race, your color, your nation of origin. And when I say immutable characteristic, I can't help the fact that I was born in the United States. I'm an American. So if I was told that I can't do something because of my national origin, because I was born in America, I would believe that that's discriminatory. And I support the spirit in which Miley Cyrus and Lady Gaga are talking about. If I'm brown, I am brown, and they say brown people can't eat cupcakes, don't sell brown people cupcakes anymore, that would be discrimination. So they're applying this idea that, transgenderism, like color, like race, like national origin, it is immutable characteristic that if you treat somebody or disallow somebody to do something, if you don't give them equal protection under the law, that somehow is discrimination. And that's where most people right now are failing and where they're wrong. Transgenderism is not an immutable characteristic. It's going to have to go back to middle school biology really quickly, because apparently we've all fallen off the wagon. At the point of conception, when a human being is being determined what gender they're going to be, we can understand that females have chromosomes. Chromosomes hold the DNA, the code of life, what your personality is going to be, what you're going to look like, how you're going to sound, what you're going to be interested in. All these things is in DNA. And one of the most fundamental is your gender. Are you going to be female or are you going to be male? And for millennia, for thousands of years, throughout history and through scientific observation, mammals have been male or female. And females have XX chromosomes, males have XY chromosomes. And we realize that when they're born because males and females have different reproductive organs. Females have ovaries, and we all know what men and women have with regards to reproductive organs. So meiosis is when the cells divide, producing sex cells. Now, before meiosis, cells contain half of the chromosomes that they need. X, both of them have X. And the male chromosome during meiosis, when it fertilizes the egg, it breaks off, it splits off, giving either its X or its Y into the egg, into the ovaries, which then dictates if it's going to be XX, it'll be a female with ovaries. If the male sex chromosome breaks off its Y, it will develop testicles. It will be a man. It's witnessed throughout all mammals. That's what I learned in science. That's what most scientists understand to be a fact. Now, what we're witnessing is a rewrite of history, of science. And I would like to quote a couple journals and scientific groups to illustrate my point. American College of Pediatricians, it's a national organization of pediatricians and healthcare professionals. It actually includes Dr. Paul McHugh, who's the director of Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins University for the last 27 years, is one of the leading hospitals on transgender studies, is coming out and saying that, in his group is coming out saying that physicians argue that the assumption that gender dysphoria, which is what is transgenderism, is what's being called scientifically, is unsupported by scientific or empirical evidence. It is based on ideology rather than science. Not my words, but the folks over at the American College of Pediatricians, the folks at Johns Hopkins University. They go on to say that conditioning children to believe the absurdity that they or anyone could be born into the wrong body and that a lifetime of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex is normal and healthful is child abuse. Child abuse. My daughter says sometimes that she's a lion. She goes, "Liar, I'm a lion." And if I were to encourage her in her fantasy world at 4 years old to have her believe that she's a lion, and we start dressing her like a lion and feeding her like a lion and keeping her in a cage and throwing her a steak and having her go to the circus and run through hoops, a lot of people, number one, would think I've lost my mind. And number two, they would say that's kind of like child abuse because you're the adult. Your 4-year-old child has a fantasy world where she thinks that she's certain things that she really isn't. She has only lived on this earth for 4 years, 2 of which she's been able to actually talk. So it would be child abuse for me to encourage her into her fantasy thinking, like she wants to run into the street. It would be neglect if I allowed her to, because I want to have her learn a lesson or whatever. So we all understand that we need to treat children like children, and unfortunately we have to have the American College of Pediatricians remind us that that's child abuse. Furthermore, as we're on the subject of scientific authority, we must ask, well, where did this all come from? I mean, we've all known that there's only 2 genders, there's male and female. We all understand instinctively that children have a fantasy imagination, and that we're not to encourage them into these fantastical imaginations. So where did this transgenderism come from? And I would root it back to a 2013 paper by, a 2013 report by the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychiatric Disorders, DSM-5. This is any psychologist, any psychiatrist looks at the American Psychiatric Association in this manual to allocate disorders and diagnose people that come into their office and are seeking help. They're anorexic, they're manic depressive, they have some sort of psychiatric issue, they're bipolar. All of these things like anorexia and bipolar, those are all psychiatric conditions that are backed by science, where peers, the scientific community, have come together through peer review and following the scientific method and have come to a determination based on evidence, based on laboratory support, that these are actual disorders. Well, in 2013, they delisted what was then known as gender identity disorder as a psychiatric disorder. They delisted it and they reclassified it as gender dysphoria. Well, that's okay if you have the support. Those things can change all the time. But what was shocking is that in this instance, there was no scientific validation like physical findings, lab tests, imaging studies. The APA's actions was remarkable abrogation of professional responsibility. They dropped the ball. They were a scientific journal and compromised their credibility simply by not providing any scientific validation for the delistment of gender identity disorder. So as a result, it opened up the floodgates to entertaining this idea of gender dysphoria, that it was some sort of psychiatric issue, that it was legitimate. And so I hope that I don't need to continue here in camp here. I think we have our heads on straight, understand that there's no such thing as being trapped in your body. Feelings change. I can understand effeminate males. I can understand masculine women. But the fact of the matter is that masculine woman still has ovaries and a vagina. The effeminate man still has testicles and male reproductive organs. The feelings may change, but biology doesn't. Feelings can change all the time. If you've ever been in love and then fallen out of love, we all know that feelings can change. We've liked different people. We've liked different experiences. We've loved jobs and then later on disliked jobs. Feelings are feelings. Feelings is not scientific. If we're going to discuss things in the realm of science, we need to be honest. And the scientific fact is that there's only two genders, and it's obvious. So, what's the problem? Trump tweeted this. People have called transgenderism an immutable characteristic like race and color when it is clearly not. There's no scientific evidence supporting it. It's a mental disorder, and the president made a decision not to divert taxpayer dollars to pay for gender transition-related medical treatments. As the commander-in-chief, he deemed that it would be a poor use of funds for taxpayers or for the defense budget to support men mutilating themselves and women mutilating themselves and taking hormones that are destructive, which I'll explain later, from people who've actually done these drugs and have mutilated themselves. They themselves say that it's destructive, it doesn't help. But what the president simply said, and again, I'm not a fan of the president and all of his policies, but if we're going to look at this through the lens of truth and not through partisanship, we must admit that there's some reason why the president of the United States would not put money to have surgeries and hormones for people in the military when there is no scientific evidence supporting that there is a thing as gender dysphoria or transgenderism. The RAND Corporation, which is actually in the pocket of the Pentagon and typically works for the deep state, just recently finished a study that concluded that gender transition-related medical treatments would cost the military between $2.4 to $8.4 million. So what the estimates are is that there's about $130,000 per person for these hormone treatments and these surgeries. So it would be expensive. It's reasonable to say that that's not a good use of our funds, especially if there's no scientific basis for it, and if it's found that it actually hurts those people rather than harm those people. But everybody's crying bigotry, right? And my second point on why I believe that it was wise of Trump to do that, it was a good decision. He's made bad decisions. This happens to be a good decision, is the fact that his priority is the military, and the priority of the military is to protect readiness, protect focus, and protect morale. Anybody who's ever served in the military knows that morale is very important. And if you have people in your platoon or in your unit that are mutilating themselves and on all kinds of different hormones, and they're blurring the lines between male and female, especially when the military, and I'm going to offend all the feminists right now, so I'm not sorry, it's a masculine organization for the most part. Those that are fighting the front lines, those that are in major combat, must be and always have been historically men. We need strong military men who are physically strong, who are courageous in battle, and are willing to break and destroy the enemy and risk their lives. And that is characteristic of men. That is a male characteristic. Does it mean that women are bad? No. It means that women have a completely other set of strengths that aren't geared towards combat and destruction and fighting and war. So if you have a bunch of men effeminizing themselves and taking hormones and taking away their masculinity, that's not going to help the military. So I believe that it's pretty obvious at this point that that would hurt morale if we have a bunch of these guys going transgendered, if that's a thing. Also, when I was 18 years old, I was considering joining the Marine Corps, and I was actually pretty serious about it. And when I went into the recruiter's office, I had to do like push-ups. They could see how many push-ups I would do. They asked me if I had been in gangs. They asked if I had tattoos. They asked me if I had smoked pot. They asked me how much alcohol I drank. They asked me a lot. They had me even write a test, complete a test and answer certain questions to determine if I was fit to be a Marine. And I got massive respect for the Marine Corps. If there's any Marine Corps watching, Semper Fi, thank you for your service. I missed my chance to be a Marine. But my point of this is that they had certain job requirements. Similar to when you applied to the job that you had, there were certain job requirements, and that if you didn't meet those requirements, you were not going to get a job offer. So my point is that isn't it fair, isn't it reasonable for the military to have certain criteria, or is it discrimination against weak people if I can't do enough push-ups? Is it discriminatory against tattooed people if I can't join the military with tattoos? And they just, relaxed that lately. But is it, discriminatory if I'm not maybe mentally fit, if I'm maybe crazy, if I have a felony record, that would indicate to the Marine Corps that I'm maybe not the best soldier to join the Marines because I have a character issue, that I have an integrity issue. So my point here is that everybody's screaming bigotry at Trump's decision when the reality is that the Marine Corps or the military is not discriminating against you if you don't meet their requirements. And since there is no scientific basis for gender dysphoria, then they can clearly and ethically say that if you are mentally disturbed, if you have integrity issues, if you're changing your hormone levels, you're unfit to serve in the United States military. And the last thing what I wanted to say about how transgenderism is costly and demoralizing to our military is that we all understand that the highest rate of suicide is with these people that claim to be transgendered. Well, yeah, you got to be in a pretty dark place to literally chop yourself into pieces and change the hormones in your body. That's not a safe lifestyle. Many of these people are in prostitution. It's a statistical fact that many of them are intravenous drug users. They're addicted to heroin. They're sleeping with men and women. These people are in very dark places, and that is the reason why they have a high suicide rate. Not because Christians are mean and they don't let them eat at Chick-fil-A. No, it's because they are in dark places and they're killing themselves at a high rate. Is that the person you want in the military? Is that the guy that you want to go to the front lines in Afghanistan and Iraq and fight with? I wouldn't even feel safe next to somebody who's willing to blow their own head off. I'm thinking, is this guy going to want to kill me? Do I want to serve and fight alongside somebody that wants to kill themselves? So I think that that's more reason to protect those who are valiantly and heroically serving in the military, the salt and light people, the real brave men and women in the military. I think they deserve better than being alongside people who want to kill themselves and are mutilating themselves. So the critics of Trump's decision say, well, they're endangering transgenders, if that's a thing. Endangering transgenders by refusing to properly diagnose and treat them. I'm sorry, let me back up. What I meant to say is that the critics, those people that are mad at Trump, if you're mad at Trump and saying, Trump, you're a bigot, you're prejudiced because you're not letting quote unquote transgenders, these people, this class of people, serve their country because they love their country, I would argue that you're the one that is endangering the people that you claim to be helping because you're refusing to allow them to be properly diagnosed. These people should never have been delisted on the Psychiatric Association list of mental problems. They should be getting counseling. They should be getting loved on. They should be getting help. They shouldn't be encouraged that their lifestyle and their decisions are somehow normal and good, and that by pumping your body with full of chemicals and mutilating your body in surgery that's sometimes irreversible is somehow helping them. No, that's harming them. That's hurting them. If you were anorexic and you said, or let's just take out transgendered and let's replace the word with anorexic. Trump said that anorexics can't serve in the military. And people said, oh, no, anorexia is normal. Anorexia is cool. It's the new thing. All the supermodels are super skinny. And let them just be. And it's this new thing. And we're encouraging our kids not to eat because we're saying, sweetie, you're too fat. And then we're not properly giving them counseling. And we're telling them to go throw up in the bathroom after meals because it looks good and anorexia is sexy and trendy, that wouldn't be helping them. That would be hurting them. An anorexic needs food, they need counseling, they need support. They don't need to be told that having that body image is normal and natural, and that, yeah, they are too skinny and they need to get skinnier. That would be encouraging them towards destruction. So when we have these people who are clearly mentally ill, who are mutilating themselves and pumping their bodies full of hormones, are being told that you're normal and you're a part of a special class of people, and you're being oppressed, that's just encouraging them in their delusion. And that's hurting them more than helping them. So I would tell all those critics of Trump, you're the ones that are endangering trans. I would tell Lady Gaga, you're the one that are endangering these people by encouraging them in this dangerous lifestyle. Not President Trump. President Trump isn't the one that's endangering them by saying that, by normalizing this and saying that they can serve in the military. Lady Gaga is the one that's endangering these people. People choose this transgendered lifestyle because gender defines one's identity. It's a very fundamental characteristic of identity. People with poor self-esteem, people that have poor self-image, are not equipped to cope in life. Have you ever been depressed? When you're depressed, you don't necessarily make wise decisions. You don't necessarily do what's in your best interest. Would it be fair to say that a lot of these people who claim to be transgendered are really happy people? You know, they may be putting that, persona on the outside, but they're not happy people. These people are messed up, and they deserve treatment and help and love. They don't deserve to be encouraged in this. So because they're so lost in this delusion, that's the reason why that they go further and further and further. They have a poor sense of identity. They don't know how to cope with life. They're thinking, well, maybe because I have same-sex attraction, that means that I'm gay. Oh, and more than that, maybe I'm actually a woman. That's the reason that I'm attracted to men. So this man's now saying, oh, well, everybody around me is saying that transgenderism is a thing. So then, and I'm getting support from Lady Gaga and Barry Soetoro. Barack Obama. Maybe that's what I am. I'm transgendered. I'm gonna go to Trinidad, Colorado, and chop off the chorizo. No, that's not a good idea, man. That's not a good idea. It's a bad idea. It's a really bad idea. You need help. You don't need to be encouraged. And that's what I wanted to say to the critics who are the ones that are endangering trans, quote-unquote trans people. I would also say that the critics of Trump's decisions, you are exploiting these people for your own benefit. Allow me to explain. My fingers are tingling right now. It's like this coffee. I don't know what's going on. I'm on fire, guys. The left are exploiting psychological vulnerabilities of people who lack a coherent sense of self by providing both activist leaders a noble cause with which to identify. I actually just ripped that off the internet of a blog that I read, and rather than trying to create my own words, I just wanted to say it, and I'll say it one more time because I think it's worth repeating. Because my claim is that the critics of Trump who do not like this decision and are saying he's a bigot and he's prejudiced, I would say you're the ones that are exploiting the quote-unquote trans people, because the left are exploiting psychological vulnerabilities of people who lack a coherent sense of self, providing both activist leaders and a noble cause with which to identify. They're robbing these people of their individuality, and they're robbing them of the treatment that they desperately, desperately need. The Democratic Party, let's take them for example. They've always embraced this social justice cause and have said, we're with the LGBTQ, right? So anybody who, falls into this delusion or has been believed the lie that there is such a thing as transgenderism and that it's bigotry to treat these people, to not allow them to serve the military, well, guess who they're going to vote for when it's time to vote? They're going to identify with the Democratic Party. So it's politically expedient for the Democratic Party to have these quote-unquote social justice movements because it helps their base. It gets their people elected. It gets them into power. Let's take a look at all these different groups that raise money and all these far-left LGBT groups. They're all making salaries. All their directors are making $80,000, $100,000 a year. They're doing fundraising drives. They get their gay pride parades. There is an industry, if you haven't noticed, there's people making money There's attorneys that are suing to profit off of these social justice movements. So the reality is that if you are a political party, if you are a special interest group, it is in your best interest to identify with movements like transgenderism because it makes you money and because it gets you power. So my point is if that it's not really a scientific or psychiatric condition, as I've already established, and it's actually like anorexia, it's a mental disorder, it's a mental illness, and it deserves treatment, not encouragement, then then what they're doing is they want the special interest groups in the Democratic Party and these groups want this to march on. They want people to be victims because if there's a victim class, then they can be exploited and they can hoist them up and say, look at these poor people. Hey, Lady Gaga, tweet about these poor people because they're being victimized, so that all the people can rally behind them and obstruct the president and have this false moral high ground, this self-righteousness, and all of this virtue signaling to all of their leftist friends, so that when I go on Facebook, oh, isn't it awful? Donald Trump said transgenders can't join the military. Hashtag dump Trump and all of this. And it's like, ooh, virtue signal to all my trendy friends. Yeah. I hate Trump too. Yeah. It's virtue signaling. It's fake moral high ground. These people aren't principled. It's a big cult. It's cult. It's a cult. I'm sorry, guys. I need to calm down. So, I'm about to wrap things up. What's the real agenda? Well, the real agenda is that truth is under attack. There's a very, very tiny, small segment of the population. I think it's less than don't quote me on this, but it's a minuscule percentage of 1% of people that publicly identify as quote unquote transgender, that they are really trying to say that they're not a man. They're really trying to say that they're not a woman. It's a tiny, 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 tiny percentage. But the entire world is talking about this like as if it's this huge group of people when there's so many other groups that are dealing with so much farther serious issues, but yet we're just rallying behind this 0.0000000000000000001% of the population who aren't even necessarily being discriminated against. There isn't any book on the law that's saying they can or can't do basic things like, have access to food or housing or any of these things. It was a decision by the executive that a particular branch of the government, the military, isn't going to play along with this insanity. So what's the agenda? Well, they're using this small segment of population to attack morality and to attack social norms. Because if you can redefine something very fundamental and basic as man and woman, then you can do whatever you want. You have the key to society. You have the key to civilization. And you can run amok on society. You can redefine practically anything you want. They are very fresh off of the Supreme Court decision that redefined marriage. They're very emboldened right now. They have the media in their back pocket. They have an entire millennial generation on social media that's supporting this. They're feeling very bold right now, and they're going for it. If I would have said to you 10 or 15 years ago that cross-dressers are going to be given a designated class, you would have looked at me and said, you're crazy. Barack Obama in 2008 campaigned on none of these things, but yet all of a sudden it's politically correct, or it's politically okay and safe to say that cross-dressers and transgenderism is a protected class of people, and it's a thing. So they're emboldened, they're going for the society, they're going for the culture, and more importantly, what's really at foot is they get to demonize their opponents. They get to demonize Judeo-Christian civilization. They get to demonize the West. They get to demonize Jews. They get to demonize Christians who identify with sexual morality, or their view on sexual morality differs with the secular left's sexual revolution. So now there's a precedent to put pastors in jail because it could be deemed as hate speech. if a pastor goes up and starts preaching on the word and starts saying that in the beginning, God created man and God created woman, oh, no, that's hateful. No, that offends me. And we're going to codify in the law that that's hate speech. And so, pastor, you need to shut your church down. We need to start putting pastors in jail. Let's start putting Christian pastors in jail. You know what? Now that we got the pastors in jail, my neighbor, he goes to church and he teaches his kids that God in the beginning created man and woman. That's child abuse. Take their kids away from him. Can you believe it? Can you believe these hateful, bigoted Christians are abusing their children by saying that God created man and woman and that there wasn't cisgender and asexual and bisexual and whatever the 57 genders that they're trying to force down our throats. And furthermore, let's just look at the empirical evidence. Let's look at the research. There was a British anthropologist who's the author of a book, Sex and Culture, studied 86 societies spanning across 5,000 years of history and found, quote, a distinct correlation between increasing sexual freedom and social decline. French Revolution much? Conversely, he found no instance in which a society retained its creative energy after abandoning monogamous male and female relationships, she added. So, empirically, it's a bad idea. More sexual freedom means our society is going to walk backwards. This is walking down a cliff. Now, what's the solution? Well, the solution is we got to love these people. These people need help. They need our help badly. And we need to start preaching a message of love and acceptance, not in their fall and their behavior, but recognizing them that they have inherent and intrinsic value as human beings. And something happened to them along the way. I would argue that a lot of these people were probably sexually abused. A lot of these people probably had gone through some sort of traumatic event. These are not well-adjusted people, and they need our love and they need our support. They don't need to be encouraged to go and mutilate their bodies and pump themselves up with hormones. There was a gentleman that been researching this for 20 years. He actually went through the surgery. He was biologically born a man, mutilated himself, lived as a quote-unquote woman for 8 years, and he's now back to his birth, and he's helped dozens, maybe hundreds of people that gone through what he's gone through. And his conclusion in having lived this lifestyle and walking through these people's shoes is that it's a very bad idea and that many of them end up committing suicide. The suicide rates, evidence shows that it actually goes up higher after they do the surgery because they're alone and they realize, what have I done to myself? It doesn't help them. The people that have gone through this are saying, this didn't help me, it hurt me after all. So the people that have gone through this, the historical evidence is indicating that this is not a good idea and that these people need our help, okay? We need to embrace science, all right? Until somebody comes forth and produces a peer-reviewed scientific research that proves scientifically, following the scientific method, that there is support biologically and scientifically for gender dysphoria or transgenderism, then let's start acting on it. But up until that point, we must tread very lightly and be very careful before criticizing what are fiscally sound decisions, like Trump not spending a bunch of money, like to the tune of $2 to $8 million on gender transitioning surgeries. Or we shouldn't do it at the expense of hurting the morale of the people that are standing on the front lines defending our freedoms. We need to back the military, not turn them into a gender scientific experiment. So I'm going to just ask you guys who are criticizing the president, liberate yourself from this political ghetto. This leftist ideology is using you guys. They're after power. They're after money. They need your delusion. They need you to deny science. They need you to believe that mutilating yourself is going to help these people. They need you to believe that the president is a bigot and not making decisions that are fiscally wise or in the best interest of the morale of the military. They want you in this political ghetto that Trump's bad, He's bigoted. Transgenderism is a thing. Your feelings determine your biology, not XX and XY chromosomes. That's all I got, guys. Thank you for listening. This was Counterculture, episode 14. I'm Aaron Lujan, aaronlujan.com. That's it. Bye.